And so this sister refuses to show up in church. And while they are there waiting, making the phone calls, and it was clear that the sister wasn't going to show up in church, the pastor who was there to wed them, the pastor did what many will call the unthinkable. Welcome to another edition of Issues by Elsie. Thanks for watching. I'm here because you're there. I appreciate your support. For those of you who haven't clicked or subscribed, I encourage you to join me on this journey, and let's keep moving. Please do not forget to post your comments and keep the conversation going. Remember, we live and we learn. Today, I'm going to talk about a miraculous provision at the altar. A brother in a church was set to marry a sister, and as the church tradition, usually they would undergo counseling and everything, and the wedding date had been set for the wedding to take place. But for some reason, on the day, the brother shows up in church and was there with his groomsmen and everybody waiting for the bride. The lady decided not to show up. Sometimes when we tell these stories, they look like movies, but guess what? These are things that happen in people's real lives that they deal with. And so this sister refuses to show up in church, and while they are there waiting, making the phone calls, and it was clear that the sister wasn't going to show up in church, the pastor who was there to wed them, the pastor did what many will call the unthinkable. The pastor went, took his first daughter, talked to the daughter, got a wedding gown, wore on the daughter, brought the daughter to church, and handed over the daughter to the brother after talking with the brother, and went ahead to wed his daughter and that brother who had been abandoned by the other sister in church. The wedding took place. Those who were present, everyone was moved by tears and made a lot of prayers and blessings, and they just blessed them because it was such an emotional act, and the people couldn't even understand what was happening. But at the end of it, everyone was so happy because they could attest that it was such a wonderful brother. They could attest of what a sacrifice it must have been for the pastor to be able to go to such a length. And when the pastor was asked why he did that, he said he had made a promise to God that he was going to give his first child back to God. And when this situation presented itself in church, where he was going to be the pastor wedding the couple, that came to mind, and there couldn't be another better opportunity to give his daughter away or to God than what had presented. And so he gave his daughter to this brother and did the wedding. And it is said that they went and lived happily ever after, and it became one of the best marriages or best couples that people would always look up to. Many a times when I tell us these real life stories and real life situations, I want us to be able to pick up from there what we can learn, so that in one way or the other we can apply it into our lives. Now, let me begin with the pastor. The pastor made a promise that he was going to give his first child back to God. When the opportunity presented himself, the pastor did not hesitate. One thing is clear. when you look at the situation, is that the pastor who was the pastor of that brother could vouch for that brother. He could vouch that regardless of the fact that this man had been abandoned at the altar, he was a good brother, or he had good characteristics. If not, I do not believe that he would have been able to remember at that moment the covenant he had made with his God, and to be able to take his daughter and to come give to someone who did not have a good character. What does that tell us? For those of us who are Christians and who go to church, can our pastors vouch for us? When our pastors look at our lives, those of us who go to church every day, can they say something good about us? Or we are just the faking Christians who keep faking and pretending to be Christians, whereas our characters and our hearts are far from what Christianity is all about. Like this brother, if we continue to go to church and not be real Christians, or not do what Christianity is all about, then let us know that we are just wasting time. And if some calamity or something were to meet us, then even we may not have people standing with us, regardless of whether it is our pastors or anyone. We must live right, because I believe that it was the rightful living of this brother that moved this pastor to remember his covenant, or God spoke to him at that time and it's like, this is the time for you to honor your promise to me. Get your daughter and wed to this brother. And the pastor, being obedient, did that. When we go to church, may we be true Christians and live right. May we truly, as we go, let our Christianity, let it show on us. Not saying that we do not have weaknesses, but when someone looks at us, whether it is our pastor looking at us or someone looking at, may they truly say, yes, we have a heart of a Christian, or we have hearts that have truly been touched by God. May we live right for God. Secondly, looking at the brother, if you probably went and asked that brother, he probably had seen the pastor's daughter, since that was the church he was fellowshipping in. But to him, he probably looked at himself as someone who was so unworthy, even if he ever thought of asking for the pastor's daughter hand in marriage. But he probably felt like, I'm not worthy enough, or I probably am not rich enough, or I probably just not worthy or meet the standards. But he was a faithful Christian in church, and when it was time, God did not look at whether his qualifications, his money, or whatever. God came through and handed him a gift of all times. Such is the way that our God looks at us. Many a times we feel so unworthy. We feel like we are not good enough. We feel like we cannot even be used by God. But the truth is, that is not what God is looking at. If we only would sit deep and think deep and keep our lives on the focus, we will know that God values us so much. Many a times we even feel so unworthy that we go into self-destruction because we feel that we are not worthy enough to be used by God. Whereas, truth is, we are actually the apple of God's eyes, just like he states in his word. May we not feel unworthy. May we always know that we are valuable people. As long as we are God's creation, we remain very, very valuable in God's eyes and to other humanities. The last thing I want us to take from this lesson or this life story is the fact that many a times when we think people that we think love us or we are in love with will do things that if you are not careful, it will throw you off guard so bad that You will lose your balance and probably never get up if the grace of God does not come through. Definitely, anyone who chooses to abandon you, but on the day of your wedding, was certainly not for you. And in as much as it hurts, it should be a prayer of thank you and thanksgiving, because only God knows what will happen if you force yourself and eventually marry such a person. Only God can tell what will happen in the marriage. And just as God provided for this brother at the time when it was going to be a disgrace of his life and people will carry the news around as human beings always carry it, what did God do? God changed the story because he saw the brother's heart. May God help us and change our stories. When people create opportunities or feel like they have taken us to the middle of the sea and abandoned us there to drown, when people create circumstances where they want to disgrace us, may God change it. Use those same circumstances and situations and change it and beautify our lives, so that anyone who looks will say truly, your God is with you. Post your comments about the situation where you have found yourself, where you were to be disgraced, but God changed it around for you. Thanks for watching.